Hi guys, so today we're going to have a look at 15 of the many cancelled Dreamcast games, and there are a lot. If you look out there online, there are a lot of games that were planned for the Dreamcast but never emerged. Now, I kind of cherry picked 15 that I find quite interesting, but they're varying sort of quality of how much they were finished. So some of the games like Austin Powers, which isn't in the video, Austin Powers, what was it called, Mojo Racer or something. I mean, that was probably not very far in development because all I can find is really some screenshots of the character design and what have you. And then some games like Half-Life, which is also not in the video, is pretty much finished, so you can get a repro like that one and play it on your Dreamcast. A couple of other games that are in the video I've got repros of, and I'll leave a link in the description to my repro guide if you're interested in getting any of them, and a couple of other links to places where you can get repros if you want to grab some. So anyway, without further ado, let's have a gander at my 15 cancelled Dreamcast games.
Many will know Dragon's Crown, Vanillaware's 2D action RPG on the PS3 and Vita, but not many know that it was originally intended for release on the Dreamcast. A sequel to Princess Crown on the Saturn, Dragon's Crown was originally conceived in 1998 by Vanillaware president George Kamitani, but couldn't find a publisher willing to bring the project to the Dreamcast. When Dragon's Crown finally saw release 15 years later in 2013, the game's art book contained a piece of concept art from the Dreamcast version, which would have had 3D models rather than the 2D of the final game. Skies was an MMO set in a fantasy world of flying creatures, including angels, dragons and vampires. It was described as a state-of-the-art flight simulation technology in a 3D universe, allowing the player to interact with thousands of other online users. It was developed by Paradigm Entertainment, but the concept and publishing were by Sega. Initially a PC exclusive, it was announced that Skies was coming to Dreamcast, although the port never emerged. D-Jump was an action platformer being released by Ubisoft during 1997 and 98, and was intended for release on the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2 on which it would be a launch title, and PC. It was cancelled a year and a half into the development process, but I'm not sure why. D-Jump starred an athletic raster and blended action and platforming elements with a plot based around time travel. The game spans several time periods, as is evident from the concept art, with the player trying to discover why the main character is slowly turning into wood. There doesn't seem to be too much information available for a game that was so far on in development, but quite an interesting one judging by the concept art alone. The art style rather reminds me of Little Big Adventure. Hellgate was in development for 15 months before cancellation, developed by Horny Dog with Jester Interactive handling the publishing. The game was said to be a cross between Quake and Wipeout, blending third-person shooter gameplay with that of an arcade racer. The player was to race through levels on a hovering motorbike while using a variety of weapons to slay demons. Both local and online multiplayer modes were planned. Hellgate was eventually cancelled, partly due to the Dreamcast's demise and partly due to rumoured disinterest with the project among certain staff members. In 2009 a beta was leaked, so you can actually try it for yourself on your Dreamcast. Glover 2 was a planned sequel to Glover, a 3D platformer for the PlayStation, N64 and PC, in which the protagonist is an anthropomorphic glove. The game was cancelled when it was 80 to 85% complete, apparently due to some miscalculations made during the manufacture of its predecessor. A Hasbro employee severely overestimated the number of N64 carts that they would need for the original Glover, ordering the production of 300,000 carts, double the usual expected sales for a third-party N64 game of 150,000 units. So despite Glover selling well, Hasbro were left with around 150,000 carts that they couldn't shift, equating to around $500,000. The name Glover became associated with this terrible situation, and so Glover 2 never saw the light of day. A prototype of the N64 version of Glover 2 was discovered a while back, which is the footage you've been seeing on screen. Geist Force was supposed to be a launch title for the Dreamcast and one of the first Sega of America developed games for that platform. Geist Force was a planned launch title for the Dreamcast and one of the most interesting looking games on this list in my opinion. The game looked awesome, from its Star Fox-esque gameplay and graphics to its striking cutscenes, which were made by the special effects company that worked on Babylon 5. Sadly, this was all costing a great deal, and the game ended up being rather short and dull despite its fancy presentation. The game was delayed so as not to release a game that wasn't fully realised as a launch title, first impressions of a new console being very important, but further development would have cost more money than a flailing Sega were willing to spend. As a result, Geist Force was cancelled. A copy of the prototype was obtained by Assembler Games after a fundraiser and was released online, so you can play Geist Force on your Dreamcast. Just don't expect a fully polished experience, but it's still worth playing to see what could have been. A real shame in my opinion, as this game looks like it would have been excellent with a bit of tweaking. Castlevania Resurrection was set to be the third 3D Castlevania game after 1999's two N64 outings. The planned plot focused on Sonia and Victor Belmont and was set around 25 years before the original NES game. The game was cancelled in March of 2000, apparently due to the decline of the Dreamcast and rumoured disagreements between Konami's Japanese and North American staff. Agartha or Agartha is an interesting looking horror adventure which began development in 2000. Set in a Romanian village in 1929, under which the subterranean city of Agartha imprisons evil. The story follows main character Kirk as he explores the snow-covered village, encountering demons, zombies and all manner of evil. Gameplay was set to combine action with puzzle-solving elements and was to be a horror game in the same vein as games like Alone in the Dark. Player choices were to affect the storyline, as Kirk could choose whether to save the village's population or to side with evil. Agartha was cancelled in 2001 when the Dreamcast was discontinued, which is a shame because judging by some of the concept art here, it looks like it could have been great. Propeller Arena, full title Propeller Arena Aviation Battle Championship, was developed by Sega's renowned AM2 and was due for release in November 2001. Set in the future, the game involves planes from World War II participating in dogfights. With several game multiplayer modes and a focus on online play, Propeller Arena really showed off the Dreamcast capabilities, as to be expected with AM2 being behind the wheel. Sadly, the timing couldn't have been worse. As I mentioned, Propeller Arena was due for release in November of 2001, just weeks after the tragic events of 9/11. As the game contained planes, and one level in particular in which those planes would crash into tall buildings, the game was postponed so as not to be deemed in poor taste. As the Dreamcast was on the way out anyway, the game never actually saw release. This is criminal, as Propeller Arena was entirely finished, and it's bloody good fun too. You can download the game to play yourself, and I have a rather well done PAL reproduction of it actually, so I'll leave a link in the description to my repro guide if anyone would like a copy. A video made in 2000 emerged on the internet which showed an intro sequence for Thunder Force 6 on the Dreamcast, suggesting that it was at one point in development. The band Noise released an album called Broken Thunder in 2001 which featured music that would have been on the Thunder Force 6 soundtrack. Composer and Noise band member Tsukumo Hyakutaro had composed music for several of Technosoft's previous games. I'm not sure whether Thunder Force 6 was planned as a Japanese exclusive or whether it would have made it to Western shores, and I have no idea why it never saw release, but Technosoft's last release was in 1998 and they haven't been active in the industry since the early 2000s. Seemingly, Sega of Japan had planned to bring the Streets of Rage franchise to the Dreamcast since early on in the console's life, in the form of Streets of Rage 4. A tech demo eventually appeared online, showing the game's planned 3D graphics and even a first-person viewpoint, and rumour has it that various new features were planned, such as team attacks. The reason the game never materialised was due to Sega of America allegedly being unfamiliar with the series and its popularity. I don't know whether or not this is true, but I find it insane that anyone at Sega could be unaware of one of the company's most beloved franchises. Whatever the reason, I take comfort in the fact that this game never saw release, as if and when we do see a fourth game in the Streets of Rage franchise, I'd like it to remain faithful to its 2D predecessors. Ecco the Dolphin 2 Sentinels of the Universe was to be a sequel to Ecco the Dolphin Defender of the Future, developed by Appaloosa Interactive. Very little was known about the game until a playable beta was found in a Dreamcast dev kit and was released online. You can now download this to disc and play it on your Dreamcast, albeit in a very unpolished form. Take the Bullet, developed by Red Lemon Studios, was to be a light gun game for the Dreamcast with a secondary third-person view and both online and local multiplayer modes. What differentiated it from other Dreamcast light gun games was that your weapon appeared on screen, much like it would in a first-person shooter. Set in 60s America, Take the Bullet sees the player assume the role of a bodyguard, tasked with protecting a presidential candidate from a gang of thugs, and must also coordinate with other members of the bodyguard team to do so successfully. Initially planned for a European release during Christmas '99, the game was delayed and in the end never emerged. Tom from the Dreamcast Junkyard managed to get his hands on a very early build of Take the Bullet, which is the footage you're seeing on screen, so I'll leave a link to Tom's channel and the Dreamcast Junkyard's website in the description. A sequel to 1992's Chakan the Forever Man on the Mega Drive was planned for the Dreamcast, being developed by the original game's creator Ed Annunziata. At some point, probably early on, the game was scrapped and all that remains is a character tech demo and some concept art. Some of the assets were subsequently used in Blood Omen 2, which came to the other 6th generation consoles, on which Ed was lead artist. Cassio was a planned stealth theft game in which the player must steal artwork to win a bet with another thief. Initially planned for the Dreamcast, development then moved to the PlayStation 2 and GameCube, but all that ever seemed to surface was a primitive concept video. Halfway through development, the developer Promethean Designs boss saw Shenmue, which had just been released, and decided to completely change Picassio's gameplay to imitate it. It became a hybrid of the planned stealth gameplay and an adventure game, but failed to get very far. Promethean Designs fell into financial difficulty and subsequently went bust. So those were 15 of the many cancelled Dreamcast games. Sometimes it was for the best, but often it was a great shame that some of these games never saw release. The early demise of the system certainly didn't help. Although with so many Dreamcast games still being released today, can we really say the Dreamcast is dead? I don't think so. Thanks for watching.